The Fantasy Codex by the Bright Letter. Act 3, Short Lore, Part 1. Sword Fight. Vorhelenat stands on a hilltop, overlooking a vast grass field. If he can cross it alive, he will make it to the kingdom of gold, where he may finally live in peace. On Vorhelenat's head lies a well-made iron helmet he bought from the blacksmith Lorvik of Reason. Solid iron rests on the crown of his head, with a plume of black feathers. Chainmail protects the back and sides of his neck, and a mouthguard shields his nose and mouth, leaving his eyes to survey the area. A bright, some would rumor mithril, chainmail covers his torso. Gauntlets of the same metal as the chainmail protect his hands and forearm up to his elbows. Plates of all kinds of metal protect his legs and groin. And strapped to his back is Behemoth, the sword of his family bloodline. The sword is great in size, both terrible and beautiful. He grabs the hilt of Behemoth with one hand, and with the other snaps the buttonhole on the leather strap. Vorhelenat raises it above his head, and brings it to a defensive angle in front of his chest with two hands. A figure is in the distance. "Whom ye beeth?" asked Vorhelenat. "Are ye beeth thy enemy?" "'Tis so, if he that gazes upon beeth Vorhelenat." Silence ensues from both of them. "Are you Vorhelenat, wielder of Behemoth?" Vorhelenat turns his weapon to show the hilt. If this man does not recognize it, then oh well. But he does not feel like speaking his confirmation. "Ah, 'tis. Thy name is Korgmusk, and I seek thou's very sword. Hand it over, and blood shall carry on wind." Vorhelenat eyed Korgmusk up and down, and could see he was a well-off adventurer. He wore a jewel-encrusted, steel ceremonial helm, a hard leather torso, and vambraces made of a metal Vorhelenat was unaware of, one of which was studded with a large emerald which he intended to pluck from its socket once the challenger was downed. He thought the armor must have just recently come to Korgmusk. A dungeon delver used to stupid creature guards, as enemies could be an easy kill. "Protect thou vital areas, Korgmusk, for blood shall fall if he dares come onward." Korgmusk smiled and unsheathed from his belt a sword with a ruby-studded hilt. This is Clostadamir. Korgmusk shows Vorhelenat his weapon, made 200 ages yester, and only owned by us one another, snatched from the depths of the I care not. Come forth or leave be I. Korgmusk smiled yet wider, and charged forth with surprisingly sure-footed steps. Vorhelenat leaned forward slightly, bending his right leg at the knee, as he just in front of his body, giving him the option to shift his body weight in several directions. Korgmusk closed the gap, and swung Clostadamir in a downward arc. Vorhelenat dodges by jumping into a somersault, landing just to the right of Korgmusk. Without ceasing movement, the owner of Behemoth was in a sort of kneeling position as he swung the sword around with both hands towards his opponent's legs, cutting both clean off above the knee. Korgmusk lands on his back against the soft grass with a dull thud. The duel's winner slowly stood and looked into the face of the fallen one. "Challenging me, you knew thy risk this fate." Korgmusk looked back with pained yet brave eyes. "You die seemingly wealthy man, and respect I shall not loot your belongings in their entirety. Go now to creation's precipice." He watched as Korgmusk's eyes lost their focus before he took the sword and the vambrace emerald. Vorhel, as he is known by his beloved Nalissima, has crossed the majority of the grass plain, and can see the beginnings of Gold Kingdom. Nalissima is waiting there for him, and they intend to settle in gold for the duration of the coming season. The weather chills as the days continue, and when the snow comes, Vorhel will be snug in a cottage with Nalissima, warming each other, and deciding on starting a family. They met in the harsh barbarian town with no name west of Reason. She was the wife of a brute leader, who treated her to massive amounts of love, as much as you could expect from a barbarian. Nourishment, the finest clothing, and jewelry as often as he could manage. In exchange, she stood by his side, accepting him as her owner, danced provocatively on command, and sex also on command. For Helenat was known in the town as an adept bounty hunter, who carried a two-handed greatsword, the same sword he used to defeat Korgmusk. The people of this town could not pronounce it, or simply refused to, as it is truly pronounced. The sword Behemoth was mistakenly known as Behemoth, and the mispronounced name was often how they referred to Vorhelenat himself. The leader heard rumors of Vorhel's skill in killing, and gave him a job. For payment, he would receive a most tantalizing dance from Nalisima, and that would be the end of it. It was not. Nalisima danced for him, and they fell in love, and immediately made a plan to run away together, to Gold. She would leave first, and he would follow 3 days later, so he would not be suspected as a reason for her disappearance. The plan worked, and the kingdom in Vorhelenat's sight on the grass plain is the place northeast of the barbarian town, where they agreed to meet. He slowly strolled down the streets of Gold, receiving a lot of prolonged stares. A man with a huge sword on his back, and an expensive-looking sword under his belt, is not going to slip through crowds unnoticed. Vorhelenat's eyes were open too, though, and he soon became aware of a busy lodging, with a sign hanging on a beam over the door that read, "Crystal Mug." Nalisima was sure to be there. He stepped in, removed his black feathered iron helmet, and appeared to look for a table to call his own, while he really looked for his beloved. His first scope for her, in the crystal mug, was unsuccessful, so he decided to sit before drawing attention. It was not long before he heard a voice from behind him say, "'Tis a nice establishment, eh?" It was the voice of a woman. "Not as nice as our place shall be, love," he said, as he turned around, before realizing it was not Nalisima. "Oh, my apologies. I mistook you for another." "No harm done, dear. I'm sure our place would indeed be nicer," the woman said with an unexpectedly pleasing laugh that struck him as even enticing. Vorhel attempted to get information. "Have you eyed a solitary woman here within 3 days passing?" "Indeed, sire. She asked me to send thee to her room on your arrival. I be the innkeeper." It had then occurred to him his secrecy was not needed. Barbarians don't come into Gaul often, and if they were searching for Nalisima, they would not have been able to get here so quickly. "I understand. Thy room lies up the far left stair ladder, down the right hallway, left door the first. Many thanks." He went to give her a silver coin, but she put her hands on his to stop him. "Do not you worry of it. Happy to be of service to thee." She kept her hand on his, and stared into his eyes. He gently pulled his hand from under hers, gave a single nod, and followed her directions before he made the mistake of looking to someone other than Nalisima for intimacy. For Helena entered the room, and found Nalisima sleeping in her bed, her tanned and beautiful arms and legs freely outstretched, and a sheer white sheet covering the rest of her. Off to the side of the room stood a table with a bowl of fruit, her folded barbarian-made clothes that seemed to have been washed recently, and her jewelry collection. He noticed some of her pieces were missing, and were no doubt traded for the lodging service. He grabbed a strange green fruit, and sat at the table, facing his woman. He bit into it, producing a surprisingly loud sound that could only be described as a mixture of a crunch and a squelch, as the skin collapsed, and the meat of it burst with liquid. Nalisima's eyes fluttered, and opened, just enough to see he had finally arrived. She sat up, and the sheet fell, revealing her soft upper body. You can hear the tiredness in her voice as she spoke. "Meinst love has come. Meinst love." Vorhel smiled, as he was known to when they locked eyes. Yes, the love was new, but it was as powerful as his ability to kill, and her ability to seduce. "I've gifts for you." She stood from the bed and walked gracefully to Vorhel and sat on his lap, holding one of her hands out almost playfully. He materialized the first gift, the giant emerald. Her eyes widened as she took the gem into her hand. "This would make a fine amulet, nay? Maybe we can find a sorcerer to augment it." His far-fetched idea of the sorcerer amused her. So few people were capable of magic, but she was not opposed to this. She raised the sparkling green gem to her lips, looked into Vorhel's eyes, and pressed her lips to it in a silent kiss. He then gently had her stand while he stood to detach a pouch of water from his belt and drink deeply. Know that I am grateful, but I believe you uttered gifts. So I did. In one swift move, he pressed her against the wall, unsheathed the ruby-encrusted sword, and put it to her neck. What are you doing? The words spluttered out of her. Your gift. After a moment of witnessing her pure disbelief, he took a step back and then turned the hilt for her to grasp. Turned the hilt to her for her to grasp. You are Diablo's jest, you are! Vorhel laughed heartily, and she snatched the sword away from him. She examined the hilt and blade thoroughly. It was pleased to see such a fine weapon possess the several rubies that it did. She felt the sword was always hers. Does she have a name? He raised an eyebrow. You've cited the sword female? Anything this feminine is such, without question. Her name is Klistadomir. She began imitating the movements of swordsmen, saying, Klistadomir, the curvaceous noblewoman from a castle far east. And so it is. Vorhel lifted her into the air and fell backward onto the bed. She kissed him. Teach me to wield her, and we shan't ever fall in battle. I will train ye, and thy skill shall spring to formidable. For Helenat and Nazima slept throughout the night, under the promise of growing love and dual prowess.